Have you ever wondered what secrets a house might hold? What horrors might lurk beneath its floorboards, behind its walls, or in the places that are forgotten the moment the lights go out? But what if those secrets refuse to stay hidden? What if something in the shadows refuses to be forgotten? In the quiet corners of many homes, there are places where darkness seems to breed. Places where silence is never truly peaceful. One such place is the basement. But in one particular house, silence was the very thing that broke them. And in that silence, voices began to whisper, voices that should not have existed. They came from somewhere deep below, from a place the living had long forgotten. This is the story of a family whose peace was shattered by the whispers from a basement. It was a basement that held far more than dust and forgotten memories. It held something that had waited for years to be heard, something that wouldn't stop until the family heard it, understood it, and paid the price. Tonight, we explore a tale that has haunted those who dare to listen. A tale of silent voices from a basement that never stopped. A tale that will make you question what lies beneath the surfaces of your own home, and what you might be too afraid to hear. The story of the house and of the voices that never stopped begins long before the family ever set foot on its creaking floors. It begins with a history steeped in darkness, in rituals and curses that have haunted this land for centuries. Long ago, the land on which the house now sits was a burial ground, an ancient and sacred place where rituals of great power were performed. Those who lived in the area, long before the settlers arrived, were known to worship in ways that would be considered unnatural by most. The earth beneath their feet was said to be alive, imbued with energies that only a select few understood. But they were not the only ones who took notice of this land. According to old records, in the early 1800s, the area was claimed by a family who had arrived with intentions that were not entirely pure. They were searching for something that could give them power beyond their years. This family, however, was not prepared for what they would find hidden beneath the ground. For in their greed, they disturbed something ancient, a force that had been sealed away, left to fester in the earth for generations. And when they dug too deep, they awakened it. What they uncovered was a pact, forged long ago by those who had walked this land before them. A pact with something ancient, something not of this world. It was not meant to be disturbed, but once it was, there was no turning back. And from that moment forward, the house was never truly alone. The voices from the basement are not a mere haunting. They are a reminder, a warning that some things should never be uncovered, and some forces should never be unleashed. For they may not just haunt the walls of a house, they may dwell within the very bones of the earth. The Thompson family thought they had found the perfect home. Nestled at the edge of a sleepy town, the house seemed like an idyllic place to start fresh. The price was right, the size perfect, and the space ample for their growing needs. But no one told them about the basement, or the voices that whispered from the shadows beneath the floorboards. At first, the whispers were nothing more than a curiosity. The creaks of old wood settling, the wind whispering through cracks in the walls. But as days passed, the sounds grew more distinct, more deliberate. Voices, soft and unintelligible at first, began to call out from below. A chilling melody of whispers that seemed to beckon them closer, tempting them with secrets they couldn't comprehend. Claire, the mother, was the first to hear it. At first, she thought it was just the house settling, the wind playing tricks on her. But then it came again. A soft murmur, like a distant conversation, or perhaps a whisper. She tried to ignore it, telling herself it was nothing. But the voices would not be silenced. Her heart pounded in her chest as the voice grew clearer. It wasn't just a whisper. It was her name. But no one was there. The children were upstairs playing, and her husband, Mark, was in the garage. Yet the voice was unmistakable. It called her again and again, each time more insistent, more desperate. Mark, too, would soon hear the voices. At first, he dismissed them as his imagination, the house's age playing tricks on him. But one night, as he worked in the basement, the whispers grew louder, more urgent. They seemed to call out to him, beckoning him to look deeper, to explore the dark corners of the house. And that was when he noticed the door at the far end of the basement, a door he had never seen before, tucked behind old furniture and dust-covered boxes. It was as though the house itself were alive, watching him, guiding him. Mark hesitated, his breath quickening as the whispers reached a fever pitch. His hand closed around the doorknob, and with a forceful turn, the door creaked open. Inside, there was nothing but the void. The dark emptiness seemed to swallow the very air around him. The whispers ceased. For a moment, there was only silence. But then, something shifted. The voices returned, louder than before, their words now clearer, sharper. And with them came a presence, something that had been waiting in the shadows, something that was not pleased with being disturbed. The voices that had been silent for so long were not just the echoes of the past. They were something far darker, and they would never be silent again. As the days passed, the house seemed to change. The air grew colder, the shadows darker. It wasn't just the voices that haunted the Thompsons anymore. It was the feeling of being watched, of being trapped in a place that no longer welcomed them. Claire could no longer sleep. Every night, the whispers came. They called to her, pulling her deeper into the mystery of the house, into the darkness of the basement. The children were not immune to the strange happenings either. Emma and Jake had begun to hear the whispers as well, although they could not make out the words. It terrified them, but even more terrifying was the way the whispers seemed to follow them, moving with them through the house. There was no escaping it, no hiding from it. Mark could no longer ignore the presence that haunted them. He spent hours in the basement, combing through the old boxes, the forgotten relics of a time long past, searching for answers. But all he found was more of the same, a darkness that pressed against him, a pressure in his chest that made it hard to breathe. The whispers had become more persistent, more urgent. They began to speak to him directly, their words clear and cold. "It's too late," they said. "You've opened the door." The diary was the key. It spoke of an ancient curse, a curse that had been placed upon the land long before the house was built. The spirits of the dead had not been at rest. They had been bound to the basement, their souls trapped in a place of suffering. The whispers were the voices of those trapped souls, reaching out, trying to warn the Thompsons of the darkness they had disturbed. The ritual was supposed to keep them bound, but now it was unraveling. The whispers weren't just voices anymore. They had become something more, something that could move through the house, shaking the walls, rattling the doors. The very foundation of the house trembled with the weight of the curse. Mark could no longer ignore the truth. Whatever had been trapped in that basement was awake, and it was angry. The house was no longer just haunted. It had become a prison for the spirits, and the Thompsons were its latest captives. They were no longer just hearing the voices. They were being drawn into the basement, called to the darkness that lay beneath. Claire tried to resist, but the pull was irresistible. It was as though the house itself was alive, urging her to enter, to face whatever waited below. Claire opened the door, and when she did, the whispers ceased, and an overwhelming silence filled the air. The silence was suffocating. Claire stood at the top of the basement stairs, the faintest glimmer of light casting long shadows that seemed to stretch across the floor. The whispers had stopped, but something much worse had taken their place. An oppressive, malignant presence filled the air, heavy and cold. It was as though the very soul of the house had awakened, and it was watching her. The air grew thick as the voices resumed, but now they were no longer distant. They were in the room with her, everywhere. It was as if the walls themselves were screaming. Claire's legs buckled, her heart pounding in her chest, but she forced herself to descend, step by trembling step, into the depths of the basement. Down, deeper she went, until the basement seemed to stretch far beyond the limits of the house. The shadows in the corners pulsed and shifted like living things, and the whispers turned into incoherent babbling. The air reeked of decay, of something ancient and long dead. And then, as she reached the bottom, Claire saw it, the source of the curse. The mirror. It was the doorway, a portal to the place the spirits had been trapped, a place of eternal suffering. The cursed reflection was no longer just a mirror. It had become a gateway for the restless spirits, a portal that had been opened by the family's very presence. The voices were no longer whispers. They were screams filled with rage, and they wanted something from her. Join us, forever. Claire's legs buckled beneath her, and she fell to the floor, the weight of the spirits pulling her down. The reflection reached out, its hands now stretching toward her in the dark. Mark's voice was swallowed by the growing cacophony of torment. He lunged forward, but he was too late. Some say Claire never made it out. Some say she was taken, claimed by the spirits that had once been bound to the house, their curse now unstoppable. But others say the house still waits, that its whispers still call out to those who will listen, forever searching for the next soul to join their torment. The Thompsons' story is not the only one. There are others who have heard the whispers, who have felt the cold grip of the spirits below. And the house, with its cursed basement, waits, still. Some stories linger long after the last scream fades, their echoes carving a permanent scar on the fabric of the world. The silent voices from the basement that never stopped is one such tale, one that still haunts those who dare to speak its name. The Thompsons thought they had found a home. What they found instead was a prison, bound by whispers, by restless souls, by a curse that would never release its grip. Was the house simply old, its foundation cracked by time and neglect? Or was it something darker, something far beyond the understanding of its residents? The truth may never be fully known, but what is clear is this: once the whispers begin, they never truly stop. To this day, no one dares to move into that house, but there are those who hear the whispers from afar, who stand at the edge of the street and listen to the sounds of something that should never be heard. The spirits of the basement have not been silenced, and they never will be. So, next time you hear a creak in the floorboards or a whisper in the dark, remember this story and ask yourself, what's waiting for you in the silence?
Sleep well, if you can.